Welcome, Adventure. I'm GM Goblin, your GM Goblin, and today I'm going to go over a character build. Now, I know I've done some kineticists for fun, and I'm going to be doing a few more builds, but today I'm going to go over just your general character creation, the steps that you should probably go in, which is a little bit different than the books, and filling out a character sheet. So you can look on PFSRD, and you can see the order in that they give you the character sheet. And number one is going to be their PC Gen character sheets. You can get all this, Dyslexic Studios, a bunch of different stuff. You can use just a standard character sheet. And if you've been around Pathfinder 1, you're going to obviously recognize this. Also, I recommend if you want to use your phone and you have an Android, Pathfinder 1, I don't know if this is actually on iOS, but I've used this some on Android, and it's fantastic. It's got a lot of material, good reviews, and so far I don't think there's really any issues recently with it, but it's pretty good to have it on your phone or whatnot, and it can give you it all printed out onto a character sheet and everything. But today I'm going to be using this, which is going to be just your Beam-based Pathfinder character sheet, just a spreadsheet version that I just popped up and found. Not a big deal. But outside of the order, at least what I recommend, whenever you see the character creation, they tell you to start with your stats. Maybe that's not a bad idea whenever you are filling out your character sheet, but I recommend deciding what you're going to play out of that order. I always recommend 1, deciding in your mind what looks good for you to play, and then choosing the class and archetype that fits it. So today I'm going to be making a character that I helped make for somebody, and we're going to be using a class, Unchained Monk. Now this character wanted the whole crouching tiger, hidden dragon kind of feel, jumping around, being dexterous and fluid. So she is going to be dex-based. We are going to give her a weapon. So we're going to go with a sword, a wave blade more specifically. Wave blade because it's got that nice high crit range, which we're going to double after a while. And also weapon group monk and special. What this means is, like the Unchained Monk, any monk or any weapon with monk special in it, they have proficiency with. And then flurry of blows also works with any weapon that has the monk special weapon quality. So we're going to be able to use this for our flurry of blows. So we're going to go with Unchained Monk because Unchained Monk is best monk. Unless you're doing the archery bill, what's it? Zen Archer. This person's done that too. She has a partiality for monks and rogues, and she likes to be dexy and stealthy. So we're going to throw in an archetype, Monk of the Mantis. As you can see, this is going to replace some of her feats that she gets for bonus for the Unchained Monk, because they get bonus feats at 2 and then 6. So what that means whenever you add an archetype is archetype replaces whatever these features are on the base class that you're adding it to. And the only difference is you can have multiple archetypes. These charts make it really easy to add and combine archetypes. As long as you don't have 2 things that have to be changed or removed on the 2 archetypes, you can add them to the base class. I always recommend taking this archetype because the Qigong Monk is going to allow you to swap out some of your key abilities and stuff to get you more specialized key abilities. So, and the deal with this is it's optional. Now, your other archetype overrides priority when it comes to Qigong, so you can't get rid of something that another archetype gets rid of, but you can remove things that you want to get some of these abilities. And this is especially good when you're playing a monk, because at 4th level, you want bark skin, in my opinion, because it takes care of part of your AC. And then you're very limited on what you need for gear for keeping your AC up, especially since your dexterity in this build is going to provide not only to your attack that we have to take finesse, but as well as your defense. So we're going to start with the monk. All right. And so we have the monk class put in, base attack bonus 1. And then starting off, we have a 2 to our fort and reflex, 0 to will. And then our hit die is put into the character. Second line, I use Mantis and Qigong just as a representative. This one will do some of the filling in itself, but I'll step over it with you. next thing I always do when I'm creating a character is I pick a race. I pick a race either to the like of my character, however I want the backstory to be. It's got to fit the setting depending on what your GM is running you through. And a lot of times I'm going to pick this specifically to go along with my class itself. So I'm going to look at the things that this class is going to need. So it needs wisdom because monks get wisdom to AC. It needs dexterity for AC and attack. It's going to need constitution. So I can look on this page for D20 pre-FSRD, and I can look into races and I can get a general stat analysis of what the ability scores are pluses and not. And then, of course, decide between them which one I'm going to go with. This one, she wanted to go with the Undine, which is going to give her a dex bonus to her wisdom, which is good. Her dexterity, which is good. Her strength, not really necessary so much. Medium, outsider, native subtype. So she's going to have standard land speed, being a medium character. She wanted to be able to have the swim speed and the ability to have that. And then you can also go through with a lot of your races. Dark vision, it's something I love to have on every character if possible. And you can use alternative racial options. These, just like your race, are going to be dependent on your DM. So Undine is not really so much of an advanced race. The points is like how much it's required to build it if you build it using their system. So, you know, gnolls and goblins and hobgoblins are all fine. Most people don't have any problems with your standard races, obviously, unless you're going to do core races. So most people don't stick to that, but that's okay. I allow my guys to play pretty much anything, but be aware whenever you create a character that your GM may not allow it, because each one of these advances, either advanced races, monstrous, very powerful, and then unknown, they're going to either change some of that stuff or they're going to let you have it. And it is decidedly a more powerful race. Aasimar is one of them. When you look at advanced races, because of Tieflings 1-2, it gives you the stat changes, it gives you the resistances, and then of course something like a Drow Noble is even more so, where the stats and everything are just up. Kitsune gets ridiculous, but today we're going with Undine. Undine base, we'll be adding in 2 dex, wisdom, and then strength to our character. So we've got in the race, which we wrote down on our character sheet under race. We put in the racial modifiers for the character. And then we have put in our changes to our race here on our race and trait sheet. And I changed out, instead of the affinity that they've got for water, which is purely for sorcerer, I changed that out to hydrated vitality. It really just gives her a very small amount of healing when she's near flowing natural water. So it's not going to come up very often, but it's more beneficial than something for a class she will never have. But that is going to be our base. And now let's pick our stat. This is just a standard point buy calculator. You have rules for that in your book, and this is the system we use. Now, I've used older systems where we would be doing things like random rolling and you get whatever you get, and then you build your class from that. With us, we use a high fantasy max points 20 purchase system. And so as you decide to purchase points, it changes how many points you've spent along with your modifier to see your total score and then your modifier. We'll just go ahead and use this for her stats real quick, and we'll go with mediocre for anything else. She might want to change this a little bit, in which case we could drop that back down to 16 and then add a few points here or there to round her out some. But this way she has her high dexterity and then a high wisdom for AC, and then constitution, since she will be frontliner and she's a D10 character. And as we've put in these stats, calculated with our bonuses, 8, 18, 14, 12, 16, and 8 is our final scores here. And then, of course, this has also affected our AC, anything like that. This does not have a modifier for your wisdom, so it's one of those things that you'll have to add in, because we're going to get our wisdom bonus to our AC as well. And I believe it's a dodge bonus for this class. That puts you up to 17. You can also put this under miss, however you want to do it. Your dex mod, flat-footed, it doesn't count. You're not going to be flat-footed so much. But yeah. That is going to be putting in your stats. And then, of course, remember, you've got your base stats. You put in your ability, so your constitution, your dexterity, and then your wisdom, giving you your final reference for your stats. And another thing to do is going to be your skills, since we're talking about stats anyway. You have 5 ranks that we can put into anything. She is always going to want sneak. She is always going to want acrobatics, probably. So we will go ahead and do stealth and acrobatics. That gives her 2. Now, there are some other things we can do to change out these skills. And I will show you them shortly. We're going to put a point into disable device, because we're going to change this and make this into a class skill momentarily. One of the many things you can do in Pathfinder, and why I love it so much, is changing your class skills to fit whatever you really need. Your wisdom's going to be okay. Let's add a point in perception. It will make more of a difference now and later if you don't have a high wisdom or high perception character. So that's not a bad thing to all put into. But I always recommend that when you have a party, you talk to each other about your skills, because especially if you run an AP and it's not being custom made to your character in adventure, you run the ability of not having certain skills. And so I always recommend, as your 0-day plan, that you get with your other party members and figure out what skill each person needs to cover, so that you don't have 4 or 5 characters all run the same skill and none of them has any knowledge, any ability to stealth or anything like that. So that's going to be something that you'll need to make sure and cover. So on how to allow us to disable device, which I know she's going to want because that is kind of her roguey thing, let's look at the next thing we need to add to our character sheet, which we will look at traits. So traits are things usually considered about half the power of a normal feat, and they are things that you're going to add to your character. You can only have 1 combat, 1 faith, 1 magic, mount, social, or what other traits, racial traits, or even regional traits, and then they have some specific when it comes to whatever your AP is. I don't have really a limit on the traits you're allowed to pick unless it's something super overpowered, which there's only a few of them. So one of them is going to be Trap Finder. This is originally from Mummy's Mask, but this trait is going to give you a +1 bonus to disable device checks. That skill is always a class skill for you, which will give us an additional +3. And very important in a lot of campaigns is you can disable to disarm magic traps, just like a rogue does. So there's a rogue ability. Normally you can this means that if it's a just plain magical, no mechanical options, you can still use disable device, even if you don't have magic. So it's a great little thing. This is especially acceptable if you don't have a traditional rogue in your party to allow someone to take. But that we're going to add to the character. And to help out our diplomacy, we're going to be grabbing a regional one, empathic diplomat, which is going to allow us to use wisdom for our diplomacy checks, just in case we don't have someone who wants to run a charisma or diplomacy build in the party and they just stab stuff. Now, since our traits give us access to disable device, like we had said, which gives us a +3 because it is now a class skill, that's going to put us up to a +9. Your diplomacy technically is not a class still, so you missed the +3, but we still put a rank into it to be trained, and so that puts us up at a +4 because of our wisdom. And it gives us some options whenever we're dealing with either buying something or the local ruffians. Feats are probably the next thing we need to work around, and that's going to be, and usually I will do these back and forth. A lot of times I'll do the traits last just to pick up any slack or where I find myself lacking. We're going to be wanting to do weapon finesse at a 1st level feat. Reason for that's going to be because our Waveblade is going to be a light weapon. And so that's what we're going to use to allow us to use our dex on it. For our first level bonus feat, we need to pick from one of the following lists. They're all going to be combat associated, but you're going to be using deflect arrows, something like that. Actually, so we can progress later on, I think for the build, we will take Scorpion style. Instead, Scorpion style reasoning for this is going to be that when you advance, you'll use this for later feats. It's not so great now, and I don't remember her using it a whole lot, but later on, we're going to progress this into like a Medusa's Strike or something, which is going to allow you extra attacks, which is what this entire build is really around. And now, you have your race, your hit points. No, that's a difference. You have your total, you have your stats put up. You're set up with your Waveblade, which is 1d6 damage, high crit, plus 5 attack, thanks to our weapon finesse. And you'll get 2 of these around because of your flurry, which you will be using. Stats are set up. Magic, if you need to set up any of that, which we wouldn't do until a later date. And it's pretty simple, and you're ready to play. I am going to be doing a in-depth with this, and I might actually be having the owner of this character from a level 20 standpoint talk about her playing it and how she enjoyed it. So, because this is the basis for my wife's character, that she played all the way to level 20 as a Unchained monk. And by the time it was done, she was a real beast. But anyway, that's the basis for this and all of the time I have right now, unfortunately. So everybody stay warm, stay healthy, and see you around the table.